And we're live.
I was supposed to write an intro, an outro for this week, but I might not have done that.
Well, you do remember one of the first rules you gave me about how we should only think about the podcast while we're doing the podcast. So
Yes.
I think you held up your side of the bargain.
I succeeded at that.
10 points. Well, hello, team. Hello, viewers. I'm Eric.
And I'm Adam.
And together we are Rubber Duck Engineering, bringing you crazy programming every week at Thursday at 8 p.m. California time. So, Adam, how about you bring our new viewers up to speed as to what craziness we're working on this week?
Right. Okay. So we had the idea that we were interested in doing something with sound. So we were going to try to take a sound file and try to visualize it using by writing some simple software. I think we were aiming for something like a graphic equalizer, where you could see the different frequencies of the sound, and then we could see the ones that were present and absent as the sound was playing. That was our sort of goal that we started out with. And then to get there, we thought, well, we should take a sound file, we should read it in. So we started to learn how to parse a WAV file. And then we started to learn how to actually get the data out of the WAV file. And then we found the waveform, and we've drawn the waveform. And where we left off last episode is we actually got the waveform to animate and sort of show us the shape of the sound. As I recall, we also ran off the end of the file and tried to display some metadata that was in the WAV file as if it were sound. So we may want to come back and limit ourselves to the actual data. I was hoping for this episode we could try to maybe actually do the Fourier transform and get into the frequency space as opposed to the time domain. I forget what they call these things.
Yep. We're in the amplitude domain, and we want to move to the time domain, or however it goes. Yes. So we may have shaved a couple yaks along the way, just trying to get our sound on the screen. But we can show our viewers where we left off if I share my screen. There we go. This is where we were. And
all right, we had both the left channel and the right channel. So I think
that's right.
I think the pink was the left channel and the blue was the right channel, or I forget which is which. But
we could look. We can find out. But yes. Here, pink. The pink is the left channel. You can see they're not actually that different. Which would suggest, I guess, whenever they recorded this, I listened to this. This is like a guitar playing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible that somehow the left and right mic, or if they were recording this in stereo, they're somehow slightly skewed. Be interesting to extrapolate back to where they were relative to the mic. But anyways, the bug that Adam was referring to, of that there's this sort of weirdness when we get to the end of the file, is one of the things that we should look at this week. We think we also talked about, we added right at the end of last week.
Oh, there it was. Did you see it go by, or it just went down for a moment?
We added this little offset, which is just showing us where we are seconds-wise in the file. And I think the file's like 30 seconds long. So one of the things we talked about doing was adding a scrubber.
Do you want to start there? That might help us actually debug this issue, because then we could scrub to where the problem is and look at it more closely.
I think we should. So if I recall correctly, so I got to page this all back in. So this is our custom painter class, which paints our little graph. And something feeds in the current time. We have our animation that goes from 0 to 1, and then that gets extrapolated into, here are, I see our animation is a tween across the duration, right? Yeah, animation, we have a controller, and we take a duration, and we begin at an empty duration, and we go to the end of the WAV file.
Yeah, and its duration, I think, is just 0, so it's the beginning of the file.
And so then we read that every time we draw, and then we grab the samples at that time. And so in order to feed this from a scrubber, we should be able to feed it the same duration. We have to stop the animation to do that.
So what I'd recommend is in the class where we have the controller for the animation, that's probably where we should put the scrubber. We probably like a slider widget or something. And then the slider widget, when you move it, should have like a callback on it that says, hey, I've moved to a certain point. And then we can just move set the controller to that value. And that will have the result we're looking for.
Okay. So the controller is here in the wave player.
Actually, maybe an even like earlier part to start at is right now, as soon as we create the animation, we set it on repeat. So it's going. So I wonder if we should just take that part out so that we'll have the animation all set up, but it will be paused. And maybe we should have like a pause button and a play button and the scrubber or something like that.
Sure. So I saved it. Let's see. This has been running on this computer the whole time. So who knows if it's still happy. Why does it say one problem? Oh, no, it's fine. That's
our to-do. We wrote that problem down to remind ourselves.
We'll get back to that one. All right, so we restarted ourselves for the first time. So here we are. We have it all primed. The animation is not started yet. So we need some start-stop button for the animation.
Yeah, so maybe we should begin there and add like a play-pause button.
So where's our build method here? We do our sample plot. So if we just did return a column.
I was actually thinking maybe a stack, so we could put the play pause button on top.
Sure. It's easy to do. Get children in the stack case. Okay. So now you want just a button? You just want to like when you click it?
I was imagining like an icon button because we could have like a play icon and a pause icon.
What's it actually called? I bet it has an icon. I'm doing this entirely from
guesstimation.
Yeah, guesstimation.
The guesstimation is the best way to write code.
Yeah, certainly when you no longer write code every day for a living.
Yeah, so this thing should call us back with like on something, which will tell us when
required on pressed.
On pressed. Oh, okay, so when the user presses the button, I guess it calls us on pressed.
On pressed, and then we want to what? We want to like toggle our controller dot.
I wonder if it has a toggle method. That'd be interesting.
I'm guessing no. But why is this upsetting us? Icon data.
Oh, we need to pass it to an icon widget.
I see, because this is just the.
Yeah, there are lots of different kinds of icons. Like you use an image as an icon and things like that. So let's try controller.play. I guess play. I don't know what it's actually called. If we look in the docs.
Controller actually does. Yeah, we should just look at the docs. There's probably some quick way to get to the docs from Visual Studio Code, but I can also just do it this way. We were talking about train hopping before. Okay, animation controller.
Oh, forward or reverse. I see. So we probably want to play forward.
That would make some sense. Let's see what the methods are. It's properties, methods, animate to, animate back, forward, repeat, reset, we sync. Stop. Okay. So, so we basically are going to implement our own toggle here.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We could do something really simple to start with, right? So this is saved. I don't know where this is going to draw, though.
Yeah, so I think you want to set the... that looks pretty good.
It works.
We could center it, but I think it's also fine to start off with it there in the upper left. So I think what we want to do is yeah, I think you're about to do exactly what I was thinking, which was we want to sometimes show an arrow and sometimes show the the 2 bars.
Exactly. So it's going to be, we have to figure out whether the controller is currently going or not, which I'm sure it has a property to tell me that, or like playing or something. I'm staring at the screen. I should probably actually say hello.
I can pull up on my screen too, so we can research in parallel. But I think you're exactly right.
Is animating right there. That's what we want. So we want controller that is animating, and then we want icons that paused, pause, or icons dot arrow. That looks reasonable. Mm-hmm. And then controller dot is animating, and then we want if the controller is animating, we want controller I wonder if there are like race conditions we have here, but we shouldn't be because we're all just running on one thread. Controller dot.
Yeah, I think it's event loop based, so we should.
It's just a little weird to be reading the same state in 2 different spots, but it really doesn't matter. Controller dot stop.
Yep.
Else.
So I think we're going to want to set state here, so I can describe to the team what set state is doing. So the way Flutter works is you write these build methods that say, given my current state, what constellation of widgets do I want to put on screen? And you sort of just write it in this straightforward way. And so that you normally think about it as like, okay, my widget is being built for the first time. Here's how to build all of its children. But it also can handle the case where something changes. And something changes about the inputs to that function. You need to tell Flutter, hey, something changed about the inputs. And then Flutter will call your build method again. You'll build a bunch more widgets. And then Flutter will compare the widgets you built last time to the widgets you're building this time and compute a diff between them. And then use that diff to figure out what to actually update on the screen. So in this case, so earlier when we had the animation, that was happening behind the scenes because we had used the animated widget base class that was listening to the animation for us and knew that we should that the framework should call the build method every time the animation advanced to a new point. So here, because we're sort of above that, we're in the parent widget who has the control of the animation, when we make a change that's going to affect the is animating property and therefore affect what icon we want to show, we need to actually directly tell Flutter, hey, we're changing something about the state that's relevant to this build function, which is what this set state function is doing for us.
I am.
Are you fighting with the syntax?
I'm fighting with typos. I think I might have done it now.
I think you need at least.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Those little. This is Dart for I'm writing a lambda or a closure.
Exactly.
You put this an empty parameter list at the beginning. So the way set state works is it's just a function you call, and it immediately calls you back. And in the process of doing that, it marks the widget as needing to rebuild.
Yep. I think we got the syntax already, all correct. And if we go back out to this, yeah, we can see our bug. Oh, you know what? We actually want this as a repeat, right?
Oh, I
Or
see.
maybe
Because
not.
we'd gotten to the end already. That's fair. Well, I think when we have the scrubber, we may change our minds about that, but for now, that makes sense. Does it work if you pause it? Amazing! Science!
It works.
Neat.
I want to pause at the bug.
Well, why don't we put the scrubber in, then we can scrub to the bug.
Yeah, it'll be much faster. Okay. Let's scrub. So now we could put...
So I'm going to suggest that you make a row where the first thing in the row is this icon button, and the second thing is the scrubber.
Oh.
I'm just slowly recreating the YouTube UI.
I see. I don't feel like I have a lot of, like, I could imagine 11,000 different ways that we assemble these all together.
This is why we actually need UI designers to help us, so they can create beautiful mocks, and then we can make it looking like pixel beautiful. But for now, we're going to get some engineering designed UI. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, so I think it's a slider widget.
Yeah, that's a totally legit way of doing it.
Value and unchanged.
So here's an interesting thing that's going to happen to us. So as it's playing and animating, we're going to want the value to be updating.
Yeah.
So.
But we're really playing.
Yeah.
So what happens is that as it animates.
Yeah. Do you know what I think is going on? I think we're missing a little bit of abstraction. So I think probably what we want to do is, well, we could either pass the controller down into the sample plot. Okay, so let me back up. So we skipped over something that sort of implied. So as we're animating, we want to update the slider, which means there's a pressure in the design to put the slider in the same widget that's already animating, so that it's the one that's ticking every frame and it knows how to update the slider.
Yep.
But there's also, the slider not only shows the status, is also able to control the status. So I think maybe what we want to do is push these controlling sort of widgets down into the sample plot, and also give the sample plot the controller, so that it can both control and observe the animation. Another thing we could do is we could make the sample plot API a little richer, put all the controls in there so it can animate them, and have it call back to the parent in a more abstract way and say, hey, I wanted to pause. Hey, I wanted to play. Hey, I wanted to set my animation to this. And then the parent could do that.
Go ahead.
The parent could then manipulate the controller with those as appropriate there.
Why is it you want to push these down into the sample plot?
So imagine we didn't do that. So imagine we just sort of went ahead with where we are.
Yeah.
The value is going to change every time the animation ticks. So in order to get the slider to animate along with the wave, we would have to rebuild this widget every time the animation ticks.
Aren't we already?
We're rebuilding the sample plot every time the animation ticks. We're not building the widget that we're currently in.
Oh.
The widget that we're currently in is sort of, its purpose in life is to sit above the animation, get everything all configured, and then let the simpler animation thing go.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. How is it that we're rebuilding the sample plot? What is causing that?
So
because it's an animated widget.
Right. So that got buried in this animated widget base class that does that work for us.
I see.
Yeah, we passed right there on line 86. When we passed the animation to the base class.
Yeah, it knows how to sign itself up to be have its set state called. Okay. Or get itself rebuilt, however that is triggered.
So I think this is a case where it's a question of how fancy we want to be. So I think if you were designing this in a fairly large system, you might want to separate the concerns of displaying and getting input from the user from the concern of actually manipulating the animation, in case you want to do something like complicated. But I think in this scenario, it's simple enough that it may just be easier to pass the controller down to sample plot and have it literally directly manipulate the controller.
It's not clear to me why sample plot should be the animated widget. Like, why shouldn't this top thing rebuild? Like, what's...
Well, we got here just by copy and pasting sample code. The sample code we got from the docs had this 2-widget design. And it's generally a good pattern. Like, the widget that gets updated on every tick of the animation, you kind of want it to be as simple as possible because it's doing a lot of work a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's a common pattern to like have a widget above that does a bunch of setup work and gets everything all ready and then says, okay, I've computed all the stuff you need, animated widget, you now go animate.
Yeah, I guess it would just make sense to me. I think we probably debated this plenty long, but my initial reaction is that whatever this thing is, that some high-level widget wants to like be receiving the thing is playing. Here is a play callback, and that the thing that actually draws the plot doesn't need to know whether it's animating or not, or that it's an animated widget. It just is being told, "Hey, draw yourself with this this set of samples, please." And how did we code it up?
Yeah, so I think we have that a little bit in the
inside the sample plot.
Inside the sample plot, there's another. There's the custom painter, I guess.
Yeah, the sample painter. So basically, the sample plot's job is to read samples out of the wave file and shove them into the sample painter.
Correct.
And then we have this separate then thing, and we briefly like put this offset inside the sample plot.
Right. And yeah, that was a hint to us, right? Because the same reason why we want to put that in here is that like the scrubber kind of belongs with that.
Yeah. And I think you're right that what's actually happening maybe here is that these are just 2 separate widgets that don't really need to be 2 separate widgets. I mean, this one's actually gotten kind of big, but that's fine. We can just shove this down there for now. Why not? And move on with our lives.
Yeah, there's always this choice in Flutter of everything is widgets, right? And so then you have to decide like, how do you want to factor the thing you're doing into widgets? And you can always just make one giant widget that does everything. Or you could factor things out. You could be like, okay, here is my like video controller that has the play button and the pause button and the scrubber and the blah, 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 right? And then but it's all very flexible and it's easy to refactor. As you're about to see, he's going to totally refactor the responsibilities between these 2 widgets. not to set you up for failure here, but it's going
to. Yeah, we did this thing. Yeah, except I'm just going to change this. I don't know when.
You can just leave it as a column. I think that's also reasonable. Just to have it down at the bottom with the.
Okay. I see. You're putting a column inside the stack. So one's a row and one's a column.
Well, I was just suggesting to change where it currently has the text to make that into a row and just start plucking controls in there.
Yeah, just the way that I copied stuff was a little... I see. So you're saying ditch the stack part.
Yeah, I think the stack was cool for a little while, but...
All right, fine. Well, now I'm lost in what I was doing. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so that was where it was, except I now need to get my paste buffer back. Means I need to get this guy, this thing right here. Yep. Just restoring my paste buffer so I have something to paste. Go back up to this. And we're just going to paste this in here. And this was...
So before you go too much deeper...
Be a row. Go ahead.
Do we want to keep the text readout? Or do we want to just totally replace that with the slider?
I don't think it... Oh, yes. I mean, we'll just try both. Why not? Okay. It's Flutter. We'll quickly try them both. So, okay, let's just try moving the icon into here. And now the problem is that we don't have the controller, so we need to be able to, we either need to pass the controller down here,
I think it's legit just to pass the controller down.
So well, this, if we're going to hold on to it, we're going to want just this. I think if I do this,
You just make it public. It's
yeah,
cool.
and then I'll have to fight with it wanting to give it the wrong name. Final. My R key really likes to stutter.
Did you tell me you spilled like nachos or something on your keyboard?
I spilled, so in the days long prior to COVID, this this keyboard and all setup was just for me to occasionally play games when I found the time. And many, many, many moons ago, I spilled an entire bowl of chili into my keyboard. And I read the internet about how you bring a keyboard back to life, and I succeeded. And for playing games, you know, I just never noticed that my R key stuttered. And then I tried to do work on it, and yeah.
I'm impressed that the result of the entire bowl of chili is just that the R key stutters. Like normally I would think like either the keyboard would totally give up the ghost or like be fine. But to have a little mini ghost that presses the R key every once in a while is not what I would have expected.
Yeah, it works all right. And set state. We're in a widget.
The neat thing is we don't need the set state anymore. Because this widget is already rebuilding whenever the animation changes, then we don't need to tell Flutter to rebuild when we change the animation.
I see. Okay. Slightly cheating, I feel like. Let's skip the set state, but you're right. It like doesn't make any sense anymore. There's something like this code is different than you would write it in other spots because we have this context. Right, it's somehow the code itself is like stateful in a different version of stateful. Okay, I feel like between chili and whatnot, my brain is lost.
Sorry about that. Can I make one suggestion?
Please.
So if you scroll back up to around line 108, yeah, you should totally do that. That's important.
Otherwise we're going to be greeted by a red screen.
For sure.
I also can't spell, so like the stuttering may also just be my brain's fault. Okay, talk to me. 113, you said?
108.
108.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest tossing these into a row.
Yep. Make it so.
Secretly, I just wanted to use the awesome co-editing features. Oh, it doesn't.
That's good. It's a lot to think when you're not typing.
I tried saving it, but it didn't like auto format.
Oh, it is.
Oh, I see. It's clogged in the tubes.
It is clogged in the tubes. I mean, again, this poor Dart analyzer has been running for like 3 weeks or something now. It might be time to let it
breathe. Turn it off and get it on again.
Control Alt Delete it here. I'm actually really tempted to do that. Oh, I see. I was also running. I was trying to make this thing work on the web briefly before the show. Okay, it's gonna get mad at us. We're gonna let it restart. Okay.
Do you want to try auto formatting it? Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Why is this thing hanging out here like this?
I'm sure I missed the semicolon or something.
Oh, I see. No, this is just the indented. This actually is the right indentation, I think.
Oh, because of the closure somehow?
Well, it's... Okay, so that closes row, that closes... I mean, is it yelling at us? Let's see.
Seems happy enough. I guess we turned off the analyzer, so that's one way to stop it from yelling at us.
It's analyzing. It's doing its thing. Let's see if it reloaded. Whoa, we're down here. Is that what we'd expect?
I think we're still in stack. We haven't It hasn't reloaded with the.
It hasn't reloaded because it's still analyzing and whatnot. Okay. How do I get it to show me the errors again? We seem to have lost that view. Here, this. All right, it says exited. I see. It thinks that because I somehow killed the connection, which doesn't make sense since I killed Dart. All right, let's run her again.
We should have one of those like counters on the stream. How many times have we started the app since the beginning of not just this one show, but since the
beginning of the show?
Since the inception of the show.
Well, I think we're probably up to about 3 across 5 shows.
Maybe when we start on the next project, we'll have to keep that count.
I was starting to think about that. What should the next project be?
Yeah,
we still got we got a ways to go on this, but we got maybe a show or 2 more.
Well, I think that the viewers can give us suggestions. I don't know if we have any viewers. If you're reviewing, feel free to give us suggestions. Leave a comment either on the YouTube video or if you're joining us live, leave it in our live comment stream.
Listen to the good doctor. He knows what he's talking about.
Also, every YouTube show I watch tells me to like, subscribe, and tell my friends. So I assume those are good things.
Yep. So while we wait for Xcode, maybe we should learn something else new.
Did you research a fast Fourier transform? Should we start looking at pub?
We totally could do that. So actually, the extent of my research was I went and I Googled Dart fast Fourier transform, and then I had more than 1 page of results, and I believe that problem was probably well solved. But we could go and look at pub. All these Dart packages are. Oh, hello. It must be starting. It must be trying to start full screen. Yeah, I think it was starting full screen. That might be a bug.
Oh, it's totally in a row. Look at that. This is my favorite thing about UI, when you have text that changes size and it like moves all the control around very slightly.
Yeah, that's not what we want.
I think we just reorder it, like put the variable length one at the end, or put it in a box of a certain size. Anyway.
Yeah, or make it fixed. Yeah, because it's the numbers changing side. We could use a fixed width font, but our poor dancing pause button.
It's become a game. Like hunt the pause button.
Oh, I'm waiting. Oh, I see. Finally, Dart DevTools launched. Don't make me miss it.
I think we should put the server in.
Oh, yeah. We need
I didn't really intend this to be a game design podcast, but it's working out.
Well, I feel like Mr. Potato Head, or no, whatever, in the Toy Story, right? They have this little scene where they're like flipping channels, and I think it's Mr. Pig or whatever is like, "Up, too far. I'm going around the other side." He just keeps going up. Feel a little that way. Okay. So yes, in our amazing row of rowishness, we're going to add a slider, and I think we decided value. It filled them in last time. Maybe the analyzer was less upset at me. Value, and that's going to be controller.
That value.
But it's not. Oh, not value.
Yeah, so the controller is set up to go from 0 to 1, which should match up. The slider is also set up to go from 0 to 1.
And what is?
It really wants you to have an on-changed callback. So that's when the user interacts with the slider.
I see. So that's on-changed. And we want to set controller.value is equal to
value.
Value.
I believe it passes you value.
I don't know if this is a normal experience for people to just sort of like write the code that you think is supposed to work, and then it kind of works.
You kind of have a cheat code for that in the sense that
I do.
You might have picked the names for many of these things some years ago.
Yeah, it's buried in the brain.
Do you want to move the text to the end of the row so that we have less dancing going on?
Oh, but the dancing is part of the fun. Yes. It's still going to dance. It's just going to dance different. Right? It's going to dance the length of our slider or whatever is flexing in the middle.
Oh, I think you want to move the text one row down, one line
Yeah.
down. Oh, that's a good question. So I wonder how wide the slider is going to be.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. What space distribution rule is it going to use by default?
We get to see. Like that's my favorite part of hot reload is the cost for just seeing is tiny.
Except when it's throwing an error. Assertion. Oh, this is some bug in Flutter Desktop. There's actually a new version of Flutter out, so it's possible it's been fixed. Because as our viewers may or may not know, we're using Flutter, but we're using it in desktop mode, which is not like a fully supported mode. Oh, it's this wide. Oh,
I
why
think
is
we
that?
ended up with 2 copies of the offset. It must just have like no one told me how big to be, here's my favorite size. Just fun.
Not exactly what I want it to do.
Do you want it to like expand to go as far as it can? Is that your
Well,
idea?
if we're like mimicking YouTube, sure.
Yeah. So I just wrap it in like an expanded. That'll make it go expand.
Wrap with expanded. There we go. Look at that.
But does it work?
What do you mean, does it work?
Well, I just meant if you drag the slider, does it actually? That's
Ooh, and
pretty
it
cool.
even stopped it.
Yeah, so setting the value of an animation sets the value and makes it sit
Look
there.
at that.
Oh, there it is. There's
It
the
even
bug.
like goes to the right. So this is, yeah, I was worried we were going to have this bug too. So we're actually seeing past the end, right? Because this goes from 0 to 1, which is maybe not exactly what you want the slider to go to. You might want it to go to like this instead.
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit in a previous episode, but right now we're if you imagine this is time, like the now line that we have is straight up on the left.
Yeah.
But I kind of wonder if we want to put the now line
Sure.
in the middle.
So that's pretty straightforward to do. We have to change the conversion to duration.
Well, I wonder if I see, when we read out the samples, we'd have to, right now we're centering the samples, the 0th sample is at now, as opposed to putting half the samples before now and half the samples after now.
This is also a little, what's progress? Oh, I see. Yeah, we'd have to.
So actually, before we do that, we should fix the bug of reading past the end, because as soon as we do this, we're going to introduce the behavior of reading before the beginning. And so adding logic to the WAV file to know not to read before the beginning or after the end will avoid either a crash or some weird behavior.
Well, we're not reading off the end of the WAV file. We're reading off the end of the WAV data chunk. We saw this in the spec, that the nested tree or whatever had the ability for you to have junk after the data chunk, and we just assume the whole rest of the file is the data chunk, which is wrong.
Yeah, so I was suggesting that we change the function we have to read the data out to do some bounds checking to make sure it only actually gives us real data.
Yeah. So read samples at seek time. Read into. Does read into like take a max? Oh, we wrote this.
Right. So now we have to remember who knows.
I mean, the caller of this does.
Okay.
This is the parser object, I think. Yeah, it doesn't know anything about the file format here. It does take an end.
Yeah, so I think we want these exact same arguments on our version of that function.
Read into. Well, the start is implied, right?
Right.
We're using the file as an iterator.
Right, but if you think about the case where suppose we're at time 0, we want the 0th sample to be in the middle of the screen. We're going to want to pass an array that represents the whole screen and fill the beginning part with zeros, and then start reading at offset 50, and then continue for 25.
We're a little bit leaking our view, quote unquote, down into our model here, in the sense that we're like, we have these zeros, or like this magical, that happen to be the right value for the view, as opposed to like null or some other way to say, sorry, I had no sample for that time. But
yeah, that's a good point. So if we wanted to do it a different way, we could do that sort of transformation at the view level and always actually just read from the file from legitimate parts of the file. And so
that sounds like more difficult bookkeeping.
Yeah. I guess I was suggesting using the start and end properties here because they were already respected in the underlying file API we were using. And so it seemed like propagating them up through this abstraction was a sensible thing to do. Like there's already a read into sync function that takes those arguments.
Yeah, so at some point we need to, well, but if we passed to read into sync like a negative number, I have no idea what it's going to do, right? If before the beginning of the file, right? So I think.
Oh, sorry. I think we have different ideas for what these means. We should read the docs. Can you scroll up a little bit so we can see what the docs are? Yeah, so if start is present, the bytes will be filled into buffer from starting there. So that's just telling you, here's the whole buffer. Where in this buffer do you want me to copy this stuff in? It's always copied from the current seek position in the file. Which, I don't know, maybe it's not useful for us. But I think your general point is somebody's got to do some checking somewhere.
Yeah, somebody has to figure out the bounds of the data frame, right? The sound content, whatever the right name for that is. The like sound chunk, right? The thing that starts after all a bunch of headers and ends before the last junk, and then needs to take the converted duration values and clamp them basically.
So I think that's in the caller of this function because that's the one that translates the durations into like actual bytes and seeks the file to the right place. So it seems like it's the one that knows that kind of information. Oh, maybe it's this function, right? Because this is like,
it's going to be here.
No, I was thinking inside read samples. That read samples at seek time. That's the thing that's like knows, seek to offset, like it knows where the samples start.
Yeah, so we take our signal with fill. Now is an offset.
Maybe now is the wrong concept here. Like maybe we should say, give like a duration window. Like here's the window of durations I want to read. Please put them in this buffer for me. As opposed to what we were saying before about baking ideas about the view into the model.
Yep.
When we have the concept of now, we're sort of implicitly saying we want from there forward.
All right, so what happens if we do duration stop? Right, start stop. And
so we should then compute like how many bytes is that, check that against the samples to make sure, hey, there's actually enough space in here to do that. Then do the copy and then be happy.
Yeah, like what happens, there's several cases here that we have to cover, right? So there's start is before range. There's start n minus, well, there's start n minus start is negative. There's n minus start is larger than samples, or do we create samples? Yeah, no, it's larger than. Am I being too defensive here?
No, this is great. I think we want to do all this checking. And there's also like end is past the end. Like it's too far.
Isn't that the same as? Oh yeah. and is beyond the range of the file. There's this, right? So we have to bounds check both of those. We have to like make sure that start is before the end. Like what happened? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to decide, like, suppose one of these errors occurs. Like what
Our contract here.
yeah, what's the
I
contract?
assume we just assert like argument error.
Okay. That seems legit.
Okay, so we also need a way to convert from durations to offsets, which is presumably this, basically.
Yeah, so maybe we should factor that out into a helper somehow. Because
Did
we're
we
going to
decide
want
we
we're going
can
to want
write?
to do it both for the start and the end, the start and the
Exactly.
stop.
I think we decided that we can actually write as offset.
Oh, little like helpers right in the function.
You
Yeah, I
can
think
write them nested
did-
functions.
we did that previously. So I think we can actually get rid of this fill range because now the caller is being explicit about what they want us to do.
Get rid of the fill range.
Because in some sense, if we don't do what they ask, we're going to throw an exception.
Somebody still has to zero the buffer. So that's what this does. It's saying,
I see.
whatever buffer you handed me, I'm zeroing it. We could make the callers do that.
That's fine. We should do it here just to make sure we don't leave stale data.
I don't know whether this goes here or here. So let's do a few asserts here.
So start before range is going to be okay, always okay, because durations in Dart are always positive.
These are like valid conditions. We just have to adjust for them.
I think
these are invalid conditions.
Yeah, let me check the duration doc to see if you can have negative durations in Dart. Oh, it may be negative. Okay, so let's see if there's a property for that. There isn't. I think you're just supposed to compare against duration.0.
Right, there's a property for.
I think you want to say assert that start is greater than or equal to duration.0.
Durations are always positive.
That's not what the doc says. It says the duration may be negative if the difference is from a later time to an earlier time.
But we want to be able to pass negative durate, negative. I don't know if duration is the right unit that we're using here, but we want to be able to pass negatives, right? Because you want to be before zeros. Or are you intending to wrap? Like, what do we show when you're scanning the file before 0? And what do we show when we're on repeat?
Okay.
Maybe this is making
those
zeros.
Are very, very good questions. Okay.
I worry we may be heading down this rabbit hole of just trying to move the thing out of the left. We could actually spend a lot of time on this.
So another thing we could do is just make it so that we never show things that are outside of the file. And so when we get to 100% completion, then now is at the right-hand side of the window.
And then it just snaps when it repeats, basically?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is that how do you ever get to that? Is it then just dilating time until like do you envision what I'm thinking? Like does the number of samples just decrease on screen until we actually get to the last sample?
Right. I think another way to put it is if the sound file is really short, how do you play it at all?
Yes, sure.
By the way, another thing we could decide is since our goal is to show the graphic equalization, we could not worry too much about the time presentation.
We could punt this? And,
yes.
Okay. So I feel like there's some learning.
There's a part of it that I don't think we should punt. Like, I think we should not read garbage data as if it were sound. But we don't have to get the perfect semantics for that.
Correct. So the question is, how much of this do I save? Am I still doing start and stop, or just start, or just now again? Let's go back to now.
Okay.
We don't need to do that. We don't need this. We do need to, we'll have to do that, but we'll do that in a second. So we can keep this as offset.
All right, so we want to replace that now as offset as just as offset parens now.
Well, actually, this is still, we didn't actually do a full now as offset.
Oh, I see. That's part of that. That's a good point.
This thing. Otherwise, we were going to like read into the middle of samples here. This is int offset. Offset. And just actually returns. And so int now as offset is equal to now.
Right. So I guess what you're really saying is we just want to bounds check at the end. We want to say, like we want to look at the offset for the end. So offset plus samples, and then check that against the chunk size.
The problem is that this guy, or this function, will happily read the whole thing. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to do another fill range.
Well, we could also just tell that function how many to read. Right now, it's implicitly going to read as many as the buffer, but we could just say, actually, just read a certain number.
Yes. Is this, I presume this must take a read number of bytes.
So I think that's what the start end business is about.
I see. So filled from index start. They're saying that they start at index start. So it's like buffer 0 is the first thing it's written into.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So we would have to, so okay. So what this actually wants to express is like a number of.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of want that optional.
Yeah, I just make it required. Like we're always going to call it with an actual number. So
that's fine. Okay. And so then this is start equals 0.
These are positional arguments, so it's just 0 and
0 and count.
Yeah.
Which is a bit lame that we're like reusing this as a, but that's fine. Okay, problems. Where are we calling it? Just read samples. Okay. Read into samples, samples. Not. I mean, that's a reasonable API. You would have seen that other places.
Mm-hmm. But we need to do the bounds check, right?
Mm-hmm. So now we need to know. It's right here, in fact.
So there's samples start offset. Do we have samples end offset or samples length?
That is.
I guess that's chunk to size. We could just rename that to samples.
Yeah, it's a little
length or something.
So this is samples end. This is a bit odd, but that's fine. And then we want this to be min. We actually don't. We want this. No. No, this is wrong. Or this is like.
Yes, I can sort of verbalize
Till.
what I think you're thinking is there's always
Thank
a
you.
question of like, where's the zero of your coordinate system? And it's sort of a question of like, is the zero at the start of the chunk? Is the zero at the start of where we're reading the samples? Is the zero at the beginning of the whole file?
No, actually, the problem is that the parser has the
So
we're in competing coordinate systems, as you're saying, right? We're working in absolute coordinates here, and it's in relative coordinates.
Yeah, so the read into function is taking it in relative coordinates, starting at where we're reading. So that's the beginning of samples. But the other information we have is relative. So yeah.
So another way would be we do an int samples remaining, which is what is this? Parser dot current offset.
Well, you have now as offset, so it's really the chunk 2 length minus now as offset.
Oh, yeah.
Because now as offset is also zeroed at the beginning of the data chunk.
So we have two different competing versions of relative coordinates. We have relative to the start of the samples, relative to the current parser place, and then those are competing with absolute. So this got a little messy here whenever you have coordinate systems that are. Okay, so this is then.
I'm going to fix up your variable name if I can manage to do this.
Was it bending your brain? Oh, I see. It was bending the analyzer's brain.
It was bending the analyzer's brain.
Okay. What is min in Dart? Is it like math.min?
Yeah, I think it's math.min.
Oh, or is it on the integer? Is it int.min? Oh, I never remember. You think it's math.min? But I have to import math.
I'm not sure. I can go research that.
It might be on the integer. One of the funny things about Dart is because it was like created in the last, I don't know, last decade, it actually put everything on the objects.
Functions. It looks like in Dart.math there's a function called min.
And I just have to import Dart.math.
Yep. It's a generic function that will work both for integers and for doubles.
Good. Well, it worked. Okay. Did I need to restart it or anything?
Oh, it worked. It fixed
Whoa.
Off by 2. Maybe we're not accounting for left and right somehow. It's cool.
We might have actually. It is kind of cool. We might have actually found a different bug. Like this might have exposed another bug that we had that is now only being visible.
Well, I think we're probably just getting confused between whether we mean left and right. Oh, I see. Maybe we were playing at double speed or something.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, because like we're aligning the single samples remaining. All right. So somehow we're only ever reading half the number of samples that we expect to into the buffer.
And can you pause it or scrub right to the end? I just want to see if we still have the bug where we're reading past the end.
Well, can you ever see that? Oh, whoa.
So that looks good. That's what I would expect. I would expect the 0 to come all the way. It's just somehow it can't go. We can't ever fill the second half of the buffer.
The second half of the buffer, yeah.
That's an interesting bug.
Read into samples. This could suggest that we're samples remaining. Chunks whose size minus now is offset.
I would imagine that number will usually be quite large. Maybe read into is not doing what we think it is. Oh, maybe because it's 16, it's uint 16. It's reading in units of, like somebody's telling, oh, that's what it is. The length is in how many 16-bit chunks we are, which are how many 2-byte units.
Mhm.
And then somewhere down lower, we're talking in bytes, or we're then counting how many 1-byte units we're talking about.
Oh, I could totally believe that.
Yes, I think right when we say
It's right here.
as uint8
Count
list.
times 2.
Mhm. Yeah,
There we go. Oh,
Oh. Right, but I think then we need to do our earlier reasoning the other way, right? Because we're
competing coordinate systems.
it's like competing chunks. So when we say
Well,
sample length, you want a different one, which I think is byte length or something like that. uint 16 list. You want length in bytes.
Where? I'm sorry.
On line 161.
161.
Right. So fundamentally, what's going on is samples remaining is in bytes and length is in 16. So you could go either way. You could say
Samples remain. Someone watching this on the internet just like sighed relief when we finally noticed the typo 5 minutes later.
The spelling has been corrected. Yeah. So there's a unit problem on line 161 where the left part of your min is in bytes and the right part of your min is in 2 bytes.
Oh, yeah, because these are not samples. These are bytes remaining.
Right. So if you really want to be samples remaining, which I think actually would be a reasonable way of doing it, you just need to divide the bytes remaining by the one of these by there's some property you have which is bytes per sample in some form.
Byte rate.
Byte rate is going to be the number of bytes per second.
What is it? Bits per sample.
Yeah. Oh, we assert that it's 16 because we decided we didn't want we decided our code is not smart enough to handle anything other than 16 bits per sample. So this is just
2.
Yeah, and we should leave a comment about what that 2 is. That's a cool tilde too.
From bytes back to samples.
What's amazing to me about this whole thing is it doesn't crash. Like it's still showing you something. Like if you work in other systems, do you make mistakes like this of like being off by a factor of 2 when you're managing your buffers? Like,
how did I spend 20 years of my life writing software like where I had to restart? Like I worked on large pieces of software where we required entire fleets of machines to bring our compile times.
Yeah, you just end up
minutes
doing things in a different way. I think like it's just a different.
Yeah, I just don't know how you do UI programming that way. But you know, I'm preaching to myself here.
All right, drum roll.
Yeah, so it's gone.
That looks good.
This would be a lot more convincing if we actually played the sound.
Maybe that'll be a goal for next week, is to figure out how to actually get the sound to come through the broadcast.
Yeah. It's interesting how the left and right channels differ so much right here. I wonder what that is.
I think it's not just a guitar. I think there are other instruments. So if the spatial positioning of the instruments is different, maybe somebody hit their drum or something, and they're.
I mean, this totally could be 2 mics, right? Or if it's, well, who knows? We'll have to listen to it and see. Well, I think we used our hour.
Yeah, so should we recap what we did? So
I think we should.
So we added this play pause button. We added the scrubber, made it all totally work. And then we fixed the bug we had where we were reading past the end of the buffer and treating actual binary metadata as if it were sound samples.
Yeah, I like that we added the scrubber. That was somehow satisfying, and I feel like we can actually sort of see what we're doing. Yeah. Okay. It's always nice to see you, Adam.
Yeah, it was wonderful to see you. I feel like as an actual player now, like you can. Like,
yeah, we just need to wire up sound. The difficulty
and a volume button. We just add the volume button and unmute it, and then we'll get sound out, right? Like,
well, the difficulty is the way that we're currently have our broadcast set up. Details of our broadcast setup is that I don't actually know how to get sound off of the computer and into the broadcast. But maybe that's some homework for next week.
You say we're new at this broadcasting thing? That's part of the fun of it, is to explore, right?
Yeah. So, viewers, team, if you're listening, do send us your suggestions for what you'd like us to change. We definitely want to hear from you. And otherwise, we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, see you next week.